When it comes to words, I'm so fascinated by phonics, and I'm fascinated by words inside of words. So like, and I think a lot of it comes from hip hop as well. You know, like I'm a massive like hip hop fan, like from old school like NWA days to like even like some of the new school rappers like Jonah Lucas. Like I'm a massive hip hop fan. So like when I listen to the way they play with words, like when Eminem did that interview about the word orange,
Yeah.
and I was like, he was like orange syringe, and I'm like, that actually works, you know.
It's all about like pronunciation. And
Yeah.
you can find beats, and if you slow down a word, you can change the way it sounds. Like slow it down, speed it up, skip a syllable.
Exactly. And then what I also like is the way you can use a word but flip its meaning.
Yeah.
So like the poem I'm actually going to perform, I say instead of saying maybe there's something in the notion that we should push forward natural beauty, I say Maybelline, there is something in the notion we should push forward natural beauty. So like you hear the maybe part, and then the Aline comes afterwards, and you're like, wait a second, did he just say? You know, so it's the way you play, and like the way you like play with like tones and pitches. Like I'm just so interested in it, and I think that's my musical influence. I'm very big on concepts. Like I need my message to come across very clearly, but at the same time I do it in like the playful way, because like like my character, I'm just a playful guy. Like I don't take all of the world seriously, because I got nuts, man.
You gotta have fun as well, right?
Well, you gotta have fun, and I think I'd go crazy if I took the world super seriously. I'd go crazy.
Well, also, there's a lot of beauty in the world as well, even now. And if you can't see it now, then you probably aren't going to see it.
Then you're not gonna see it, and I think that's a lot of the time people are so, and because the media is so focused on like the negative, we lose sight of what's positive. And from the time you lose sight of what's positive, everything becomes dull. Like you even like look around, like there is so much color around here. But like people won't say this, like, oh, that building's grey, or this one's brown, and it's like, yeah, but like there's so much out there for you. Do you know what I'm saying? Even just aesthetically, like it just looks.
Beauty and the symmetry.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, when you start to focus on the good aspects of things, and it's not to say like nothing is negative, you know, but when you start focusing on solutions instead of problems, then you see the world differently.
One of the big things that you want to do is use any opportunities that come your way to share and elevate those around you.
Bro, I have to, man. I have to, because like I grew up like for the beginning of my life, it was nice. I had my parents, like I had my brothers. They never lived with me per se, because they're a lot older. You know, they had like their own places and stuff, and it was nice and things were good. And then from like 14, it just went downhill. You know, I went downhill. I lived by myself. Like, you know what I'm saying? I had no parents. I lived by myself. So I had to grind. I had to hustle. Do you know what I'm saying? And I had to make sure that whatever I did, it was not only for the benefit of myself, but it was also to make sure that like my uncle was good, or like my brother was good, because I was looking after them. So whatever I did, I had to make sure like they were good, they could eat, and then I would eat afterwards. So I've always had that mentality of putting people first. And like people could turn around and say, oh, you know, like, well, what about, you know, keeping yourself safe? And I'm like, I never disregarded myself. Do you know what I'm saying to you? I never disregarded myself. Like,
but you knew
I just knew that I had to lift my, you know, my uncle, and I had to lift my brother, you know, make sure that they were good. Do you know what I'm saying to you? So I keep that within, like that's like built into me now. And I keep it within me no matter what. Like, and people could say, oh, stop hanging on to the past. And I'm like, I'm not hanging on to the past. I'm using it as a motivation. You know, so like all the people I've met in the poetry community, like they're all bloody amazing. And like, I can see that they're all doing different things. And it's like, well, what can I do to try to elevate them? And I'm still at the beginning stage as well. Like, I'm at the beginning of my poetry journey. So I'm still learning.
Yeah,
do you know what I'm saying? But if I can do something that takes me from like level 1 to level 2, and I know that, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 people will benefit from that, why am I going to keep it to myself? We've all written stuff that's vulnerable, you know, and once you let out onto the page, that part of you that's on the page isn't part of you anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's now physical. It's a physical manifestation. Yeah. So it's up to you to make sure that whatever you've put out, like that hole that you've got inside of you, you got to fill that with something positive. You got to nourish it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a vacuum. I was in a dark space, and poetry brought me out of it. And I wouldn't even say poetry brought me out there. I would actually say journaling brought me out there. And my journaling manifested into poetry. Like, I would never have been able to understand poetry if I didn't journal. And I never would have been able to understand journaling if I wasn't in a dark place. So like, everything has its reason. And as much as like we all want our lives to be positive and everything must be good and glitz and glamour, and like, I don't care about none of that stuff, man.
Face reality.
Oh, reality is reality. Reality can be dark as hell, or it can be like bright as hell. Like, it's up to you to understand the moment that you're in, and then make sure that you're good within that moment. Like, even if you're sad, like, embrace your pain, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Embrace your pain, like, settle on your emotion, and then boom, like, move on from there.
Write it out.
Yeah, and like, I've written it out. Like, I've written letters to like loved ones. I've written letters to like people that I've lost. I've written poetry to people that I've lost. And it's really helped me understand, like, for example, what death is. Like, my outtake on death is different. Like, I have like a more of like an old Egyptian philosophy on death, which is, they say death is just the beginning. So like, for me, it's like, okay, so we're in this world for like, I don't know, 80 plus years, for example. So what happens after that? Because we only know what we're either taught, or from books, or from scriptures, or from movies. But you don't know until you're in it. And you'll never really get a feeling of it until you're in it. So like, I'm less afraid of certain things than I was before when I was like before the writing. I'm less afraid of certain things now. And the writing has really helped me to understand things. So like, it's actually given me knowledge. Like, my own poetry, even though like it's coming from my head, like, it's given me knowledge. Every poem I write, it gives me a different insight, and it gives me an aspect of things I didn't understand before, or an aspect of things that I knew was in my head. I just didn't know how to sort of like manifest it, you know. And I think that's the great thing about poetry, is that when you can manifest stuff onto a page, and then you could like get it out to like people, like, oh man, like, I think it's incredible. I think the most important thing is to evolve your level of understanding, because once you do that, everything else kind of falls into play. So like, I could tackle racism, but then like, if I put all my focus on racism, what about mental health? What about like, you know, single fathers? What about them? You know? But then I could then tackle everything on single fathers. What about the racism? What about the mental health? You know, so for me, it's a case of like, well, what unifies all of them? It's understanding, it's knowledge, it's changing the narratives. So once you change the narratives, and people start to change the narratives because of your inspiration, all of these things fall into play. Because it's like, oh, hold up, he said this about racism, but then that also applies to such and such and such and such. And then you start to apply little like tidbits into your everyday life. Because everybody lives different lives. Like, everybody here is a different person. So you might as well just focus on what's common in all of us. And humanity is what's common in all of us.
Yeah.
Knowledge, education, understanding is what's common in all of us.
That's something that, without giving too much away, but that's something that you've actually wrote in the poem that you composed for us.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, so just quickly, without giving too much away,
All right.
just let us know what you want people to take from that poem.
I want people to understand their humanity and what they can do in order to help others around them. Because at the end of the day, like, yes, we're built from like organs and bones and everything else, but there's more to us than just anatomy. So look at your humanity, what makes you human, and push forward and help other people. Yeah, I'll leave it like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rohan Samuel.
Thank you.
Cool. Right.
Wicked.
Just on time as well.
Yeah?
Let's go.
Brilliant.
Let's go this way.
Yeah, man. Bro, that was good, man. I enjoyed myself.